Hey, so today I want to talk about dumb suppers. You may be familiar with the term, you may not be familiar with the term. The reason I'm going to speak to you about it is because we are actually holding one as an event at THOF. We're holding it at the Talbot Hotel on Halloween night. Before I talk about that, especially given the fact that it's probably already happened by the time you're watching this video, we do plan on holding at least one every year on Halloween night, possibly at the same location, possibly at different locations around the UK. But basically, what a dumb supper is I like to think of it as a kind of seance without a psychic or a medium. So you, the people who are attending the dumb supper, are that conduit. You are that. You're there for an immersive experience. Um, Another way that I have described it before to maybe some slightly less witchy people that worry about that sort of thing is imagine a 2 minute silence where you take 2 minutes out of your time to be silent and to think about those that have passed before you, the sacrifices that they've made, people that have died, but you don't really. I mean, 2 minutes isn't enough, is it? So what we do is we stretch that time over a period of an hour or two and have a three-course meal in it. Um, so basically, to cut a very, very long story short, um, I have written a blog post about the dumb supper, which I will leave in the description below. But what it essentially involves, or R1 involves, a group of people coming together. We'll normally give a talk about the history of the dumb supper beforehand, so everyone's on the same page and kind of knows what to expect. All of those people will then be led on a short walk around. They'll be given a candle, or they'll select a candle, and they'll be thinking about the people that they want to try and contact, that have passed away. They'll be thinking about ancestors. They'll be thinking about questions for those ancestors, and then what they'll then do is arrive at what we call the veil. So it is a doorway that's cloaked in fabric. Just before they get to that point, they will be confronted with the person that's leading the ceremony, because it is an actual magic ceremony, a ritual. And that person, this year it's going to be me, has a skull, a human skull. They then have to look into the human skull and they have to say, I'm ready to basically I'm ready for this. It's a declaration more than anything. I'm ready to open myself up to the possibility of talking to someone tonight. I'm willing to immerse myself essentially in Halloween night, in the realm. I'm wanting to pierce the veil. I want those to come to me. So they'll basically say that into the skull. The skull's representative, represents a face of the dead essentially. So, people might struggle to just say that out there. So we try to give them a focal point in which to, express what they need to express, welcome in what they want to welcome in, because as soon as they step through that veil, through that cloth, into the sacred space where the ritual is being held, they're not allowed to talk. So that's why it's called the dumb supper, because dumb means silent essentially. So when they go into the sacred space, there's a grand dining table, huge big dining table. We normally do this for about 50 people, so you can imagine how big it has to be. The one that we're doing is in the ballroom of the Talbot Hotel. So at the end of the dining table, there's a huge big altar of the dead, huge big ancestral altar. And they then go over to that ancestral altar and they'll light their candle, which represents them, their connection with those that have passed before. It can represent a person. It basically represents the fact that they're adding to the altar. Some people bring letters that they write to the dead. Some people bring offerings, pictures, mementos, anything. They then place that at the altar. They then take their seat, and when everyone's basically done that, then a three-course dinner is served. So it's served in reverse, because everything's done in reverse. So all of the cutlery on the table is around the wrong way, upside down. We obviously don't sit people the wrong way round because they need to be sat at the table. I have heard some people do that though. And everything is done in silence by candlelight. So we start with the dessert, and then during the dessert, during the main course, during the starter, just in general in that area, what happens is that you really feel the presence around you. You can really feel the dead coming to you, and you might see things. People see things. People see people that they've known that have died wandering around. People feel things. People hear whisperings in their ear. It's really just to get people into the frame of mind that it's not about them, it's about the dead. It's kind of, to a certain extent, a sacrifice. It's basically quieting your conscious mind and allowing your unconscious to take hold in a respectful manner. So instead of putting what you want, at the forefront of things, and your current life at the forefront of things, you're putting the dead at the forefront of things. That's why we always serve the dead. There is a place at the table for the dead in front of the altar, and they're always served first. So they're served their water or wine first, they're served their dessert first, they're served their main course first, they're served their starter first. They always get served first. So after that has taken place, you can then go back to the altar. You can retrieve anything that you did want to take back home with you. So if you did take a portrait or a picture or something, then you would then take that back. And then you'll leave the room and go back downstairs or to another room basically, and you're then able to talk about your experiences. And people have some amazing experiences in this kind of sacred ritual, sacred ceremony at the end of the day. The one thing that people don't see is they don't see what happens before the dumb supper, and then they don't see what happens after the dumb supper. So before the dumb supper, we set up the sacred space. So we actually perform a secret, is it secret? No, it's kind of secret ritual that helps establish a boundary in that room, that helps the dead and the spirits to manifest easier. Halloween, the veil between this world and the other world is said to be at its thinnest anyway, but we like to add a little bit to help that process along. So we create a boundary within the room that allows for that to happen, and then obviously at the end the boundary then gets removed. We don't do that with the clients in the room because we try to make that room a sacred space before they enter, so they are entering through the veil into a sacred room. Afterwards, when everything's essentially banished, because we don't want to leave things behind and leave that kind of doorway unlocked, especially considering it's not our property. Then we will start to disassemble the ancestral altar. All of the letters will be burnt, and the ash will be mixed with the food, and then that food that was served to the ancestors, unless it's disappeared, generally it doesn't disappear, maybe it will this year, I don't know, will then be taken and buried at a local graveyard. So we always pick a graveyard locally to where we're holding the dumb supper. So this is a commercial dumb supper that we do, in that we charge tickets for it and that we do it for a lot of people. But the ones that most people would be familiar with would be private dumb suppers. So they're done in covens, they're done just as groups of family members, that sort of thing. And you would hold that maybe for five or six people, 10 maybe at the most. Basically a family meal, but you're basically doing the same thing. So you are cooking a three-course meal normally. The cutlery, the napkins, everything's black, ideally black, because that's, often used for evocation, the drawing in of energy. And you might have an ancestral altar set up. You would always leave a space, at least one, for the dead. You might leave, if you want specific dead to join you, a separate place for each one. Obviously, you have to have a really large dining table if you've got loads of people coming. Um, but we just leave one, and then you have the huge ancestral altar behind it. So this is a practice that I'd really recommend that you research. It can be a really great thing to do, and it can be quite a healing process for people, because certainly in the West we don't have a lot. Most people don't work with the dead. Once someone dies, they're kind of buried. They have the funeral a couple of weeks after, and after the person's died, and then that's it. Like, sometimes they might think of them, but you know we get so many clients which have so say spooky things happening. They feel like something's trying to reach out, and they're not receptive to it. They don't know how to be receptive to it. They struggle with it. And a ceremony like this, even if you just did it once a year, it does give you that special time to commune with and open yourself up to the ancestors, people that you may have lost. And yeah, I'd really recommend reading the blog, do a little bit of research, and definitely hold your own if you don't already.